Good morning and welcome to the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development for this Thursday, May 8th, 2025. My name is Councillor Evan Duncan. I'm the chair of the P&D committee here. I'm also joined by my council colleagues, Councillor Santos and Wyatt. Also by our senior committee clerk, Ms. Cowan, and our director of property planning and development, Ms. Boris. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territories, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 41st Nation in Treaty 3 territory. Before we get into our agenda here and our motions, we just have to clean some things up due to a technical issue. Councillor Wyatt. Sure.
The agenda material?
Yes. Okay. So suspension of the rules to accept the agenda material for today's meeting, moved by Councillor Wyatt. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that is carried. Could I have a motion to accept last meeting's minutes? Also moved by Councillor Wyatt. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that is also carried. I will turn it over to our clerk.
Okay, so we have one delegation today, and that's Harriet Zaidman, who's here in opposition to report 2.
Point of statement.
Just a minute here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Okay, I'm here on behalf of the Friends of the West Kildonan Library Committee, which was formed when it was announced that the West Kildonan branch would be closed and moved to the Garden City Shopping Centre to serve the very large West Kildonan, Old Kildonan, Maples, and the growing north and northwest areas of the city. I just would, in recalling it, I'll remind you of 3 things. We gave ample evidence to show that that proposal on the edge, rather than the heart of the Northwest community, does not, in our view, fulfill the function of a library. And we think that the space being leased is not a good use of taxpayer dollars. But the West Kildonan branch was added to the list of historical buildings and cannot be demolished. And we would remind you that the city committed to renovating the West Kildonan branch. Designs were presented to the public and one was chosen. That design, assessed at $10.7 million, was accepted, but no money was assigned to the development. And that's what brings me here today. Along with others, I heard the assurance that the West Kildonan branch would remain as a library. And we would like to know if this promise will be fulfilled. Both as it exists now and with the redesign, the building has space for groups to meet and use for a wide variety of purposes. The proposed design would make it even more appealing, enhancing its location between schools and a busy community center. According to that architectural report, the building needed a roof within 18 months, and that time limit is coming. When will it be done? Where does this renovation sit in the frame of the current budget? Neither we, who have organized specifically to support the West Kildonan branch, nor the Lord Selkirk West Kildonan Library Advisory Committee have been advised, informed, kept in the loop. Along with many others, we are concerned that the new branch will be used as an excuse to close the West Kildonan branch. This is what people are saying. I'm reflecting this to you, as was the original. And barring any action on the building, we think this concern is warranted. We would like an assurance and knowledge about the plan of action that the West Kildonan Library will be maintained physically, improved as a library, and used going forward as promised as a library. So we'd like to know what is the city's plan on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation today. Councillor Wyatt, yes.
Yeah. Have you spoken to Councillor Eady about this matter?
Yes.
And what does he say?
He has no knowledge of the specifics either.
He has no knowledge of what?
The specifics, the plan for the replacement of the roof and the development of it.
I can't hear you.
Pardon me. He did not know what the specifics are in the budget, because he said the money has not been funded for it. Money has not been
but it's listed in the budget as a project, isn't it?
But not the timelines, the dates,
Right.
So we would like to.
So have you spoken to the public service about this?
No, I didn't.
No.
I'm not.
But you realize this really doesn't have anything to do with the West Kildonan Library.
I'm here on behalf, I'm not, and say, when you have to fill in a box that says support or opposed, I would say I'm a concerned citizen asking considering what is money that is being spent on that new library, fine, but what is the plan for the West Kildonan Library, which needs work, and in order to be able to,
I don't know, I'm a supporter of it. Who, you're telling me that it was declared a heritage site?
the
Heritage
heritage
building?
building, yeah.
Really? Place is a dump. It's not a
The
heritage.
place is
building.
the place is not a dump.
It's an old building.
I'd encourage us, let's stay focused on the matter here. This is item number two.
But it's an old building. It's
Excuse
not
me,
a
Councillor
heritage
Wyatt,
building built
it's
in
an
the
expression,
1960s.
Councillor Wyatt, and just for our delegation,
Okay.
to be clear here, item number two is an expression of interest number 392, 2024, and the associated lease with the 2305 McPhillips Street Garden City Shopping Center. Do you have anything on that specific
Well,
site?
no, well, she's.
I'm asking our delegation here, Ms. Zaidman, do you have any further comment on that site?
No, I
Okay.
do not.
Great.
I
hear
just
all
have
your
a question.
concerns. Yes, please go ahead, Councillor
Yeah,
Wise.
so, like, wouldn't you want to have a brand new library on that site?
It's not a question of having a brand new library. No.
No, you want a better library, expanded library, one that will serve the area for the future, right? Wouldn't you want to have a brand new library?
No,
Really?
it's not a
Alright,
question
okay.
of having a brand new.
Okay.
For your questions and
No,
your
spend some money
presentation.
on old
Thank you very
buildings,
much.
concept work.
Right,
Yeah,
that wraps it up for our delegations here today. We can move into our reports, starting with item number one. We have members from the public service here. I'll allow our director to introduce them as they come forward. Item number one is Portage and Main intersection decommissioning study of the concourse.
Good morning, councillors. Jeff Patton, Director of Assets and Project Management. I'm joined by Rob Loudfoot and Brad Erickson from Municipal Accommodations. This is a request for an extension. We're completing work on the study for the decommissioning of the concourse. We need a little bit more time. So we're asking for up to 90 days for us to complete the work. The consultant is in the process of completing the draft report, but also developing final costs. And that's what council has directed us to come back with to confirm the costs for any potential decommissioning at the site. So
So why are we doing this yet?
this council directed us to, councillor.
Okay, so why?
In terms of closing, well, so when the report came forward for council consideration, as you're aware, the waterproofing membrane has failed on the concourse and water is leaking into the concourse.
Partially,
Pardon me?
partially.
No, the entire membrane has failed.
Okay.
So we've inspected it in many locations, even with the ongoing surface works. Brad's team has also been out there as well to investigate other areas. So the membrane is in excess of 45 years old. So there was a report that was brought forward indicating to rehabilitate that membrane. There was a Stantec report indicated approximately $100 million worth of work to do that in about 5 years of disruption as we move traffic around to accommodate that work. So at that point,
Now it's up to 100 million.
that
It wasn't 100 million before.
that I think was 73 million plus at that point. So this is a
That
few years-
includes the
that-
opening of the intersection.
No, it did not. So it included
The number has changed.
bypasses
Number
and
has
temporary
changed.
visions, some
Numbers
water
changed.
main work. So
The numbers changed.
So yeah, definitely, and that was a very, so we provided council a high level estimate of about $20 to $50 million to
right.
decommission. But we hadn't done any work. Council sent us back to do the work to confirm that number and what it would take to decommission the site and report back. So we're asking for
Does
that.
your decommissioning work include the potential impact to the city of Winnipeg in the event we decommission?
So the direct impacts would be to the tenants that currently rent space in the area.
That's not correct.
So I would defer in terms of what impacts are you looking for, councillor? Like, are you talking about legal impacts or?
Well, no, it would be an impact on the entire Winnipeg Square shopping mall.
Sure, there would be, yes, that
I mean,
continuous
basically,
access.
We would be cutting off the Winnipeg Square shopping mall from being connected underground, without having to go outside. you're cutting them off from basically 3 of the towers out of the 4. Let's be clear about this.
The access would be no longer through the concourse, they would have an alternative access.
Reducing their potential clients by 75%, maybe more. And the impact in terms of the assessment base on the city, is that being analyzed on what that will be to the square? Because right now the square brings in assessed value to the city and is worth so much. And I can guarantee you, the minute that concourse is decommissioned and shut down, they will be appealing their assessed values to the Board of Revision. And we're going to take a heck of a knock. Has that been taken into consideration as part of this project?
So no, Counselor, no, we're because that's not the direction that we've been given.
Well, that's the direction the public service should be coming back and insisting that we should be including in this, because we should know the big picture. The big picture is, yes, it may be 100 million, it may be 75, it may be 60 by the time we get around to tendering it out. But if we were to preserve the concourse, it'd be nice to know what the annual assessed value hit on the city. The mayor has said that it's cost $1 million a year to operate. I don't know where that number came from, but anyway, I'd like to know the impact on the assessed values of the city, because I can guarantee you that mall will empty out. It will be a dead mall when you got one tower going there, the rest won't be going there.
Yeah, so I would assume, Counselor, so the public service is going to come back and confirm what it would take to decommission and seek direction from council. Council has not made a direction.
How do we amend the motion here today so that you do include in that your the impact on the assessed values to the city of Winnipeg pertaining to the Winnipeg Square in the event that the decommissioning does take place of the concourse?
If council wants to add that scope of work to us, certainly council can. Council has to assign budget to this. To add that
That
scope
won't be
of
hard
work.
to do. I can do that. I can pick up a couple phone calls and I can get to those numbers pretty quick.
So what we need to do is but council can direct us to amend this report. Before we bring it forward, if that's the direction. But certainly the direction we're working right now is to confirm what decommissioning looks like and what a real plan would look like to present to
And
council.
you gotta remember that they won't be the only ones who will be applying to the Board of Revision to get reassessed values. Each tower will apply for reassessment because they will argue in the Board of Revision that they too are impacted from the inability from the other towers from accessing their property with their employees to go shopping, to go to a restaurant, to go to their food court, whether it be in the ED Tower or the Richardson Building. They will all be applying for reassessment. So we're going to get hit by reassessed values on all 4 towers and a shopping mall. Not to mention the parkade too, by the way, which will also apply for a Board of Revision reassessment. They will argue this is a massive hit to the parkade and the inability now for people to park and walk through to another tower. They too will demand a lower rate of assessment. We're going to get hit across the board if this is decommissioned. I'd like to know the big picture. And the council should have the big picture so that we fully understand the impact. Otherwise, we're going to decommission and then we're going to wake up one day and say, oh, wow, we just lost, for $2 million to the tax value coming out of the city because we didn't do our homework. Right. So that's my thoughts, Mr. Chairperson.
Yeah, and I appreciate those thoughts. Right now, they're asking for a 90-day extension.
Yeah, I know. This is
Decommissioning.
the time to do it.
Yeah, and I don't disagree that those need to be taken into consideration. I think that also if we were to send the public service away with that scope, they would also have to consider through corporate what the impacts of any new businesses that come up that are street level at the corner. I think that would also have to be weighed.
They would take the net.
Right, so I would like to see this come back with the cost of decommissioning, and if we need further information, we're not going to make a decision at that point in time whether it is decommissioned or not. This is strictly to find out the costs. So yes, Councillor Santos.
Find me again, I think back a couple of months ago when we started talking about the decommissioning of the circus. the rotunda, there was also conversations about the art piece.
Correct.
That is in there as well. I don't see anything in here, but I think we had more internal discussions about, would that be included in this report back about the costs of removing the art piece?
That's correct, Counselor. So
Okay.
Council has directed us to work with the Winnipeg Arts Council on that piece of public art. That piece of public art is integral to the construction of the concourse. So, but our consultant's going to be looking at that to determine what, if anything, can be done to remove it without destroying it. But I can tell you that we've worked collaboratively with the Bruce family and also with the University of Manitoba, and already a 3D laser scan of the artwork has already been completed, and therefore the artwork can be replicated again exactly as it appears. So that's already been done, and certainly a commitment to doing that. But that is part of our scope of work to review that cost as well.
Yeah, no further question.
Councilor Wyatt?
You're aware as well that the Winnipeg Parking Authority approximately 13 or 14 months prior to the decision by council, decommission and reopen Portage and Main and decommissions the concourse of the Winnipeg Parking Authority was granted in January of 2024 the authority up to $30 million to start the rehabilitation of their underground parkade because of the failed membrane and whatnot at Millennium Square, at Millennium Library. You're aware of that?
I'm aware of a Millennium Library project that's going on, yes.
Yeah, you're aware we proved that based on borrowing more debt capacity, and that even though the Winnipeg Parking Authority came in a report saying that, well, it will only be as high as 30 million. The year before, they had an estimate as high as 50 million, which they downplayed. Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware about the specific
Okay.
discussion.
And are you
around
aware
budget
that
council.
they were the ones that actually selected the consultant? They were also the ones that decided on the point system. So it's kind of like the judge and jury deciding the fate of the parkade. They didn't have an independent authority doing the assessment on whether they should maintain the parkade, fix the parkade, or sell the parkade. So surprise, surprise, they said, we shall keep the parkade and we will fix the parkade and we'll ask council for blowing it. Are you aware of that? And even though they then claimed as well that they were unable to separate the titles being the strata above being the library, even though we did that at Winnipeg Square when we sold the parkade below and we even sold the air rights above and left the square in the middle, right? They claimed that that was legally impossible in the standing committee in the budget process in 2024. Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of all the detailed
wouldn't be aware of
discussions.
it.
So no, I would say those questions should be pointed to.
So you're aware that here we are shutting down a walking concourse for pedestrians at a time when we're all talking about how important it is to walk, but we are spending up to 30 million, maybe 50 million or more to maintain underground facilities for cars in the very downtown that we say we care about pedestrian activity. You're aware of that? That's our policy right now as a city.
Well, I'm just aware that the council hasn't made any determination on
I know.
the
I'm
fate
doing
of
all-
the concourse.
I'm doing all this for the sake of making a point.
Yep.
But anyway, thanks, Jeff. Okay.
90-day extension, do I have a mover?
This goes to council.
Yes.
Good, I can repeat all the stuff, same things there. Wonderful, thank you.
I'll move.
Okay, Councilor Santos moves extension 90 days. All in favor? Aye.
Nay.
Councilor Wyatt, recorded in opposition? That's
Not
carried.
because you guys did anything wrong.
Thank you very much. Item number 2 is the expression of interest.
I'll move the approval.
Does anybody want to hear anything?
Yeah, I do have questions.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Wyatt's prepared to move at this point in time, so we'll hear from the public service.
Okay, so yes, we're joined by Jen Hansel from Municipal Accommodation. So I'll use this this term exciting in a couple of reports coming up in terms of this is a net new library story, and Karen Borland from Library Services is also here to support the work. So I'll just quickly, yes, this is council directed us to investigate a new lease space for the growing area of Northwest Winnipeg. in the 2024 budget. The work started in 2024, and the expression of interest closed August 30th, 2024, with only one proposal being received to meet the city's program of requirements, and negotiations have come forward, have taken that time and culminated with this report to you recommending a net new library space and work that would be done on the space to ready it for occupation in 2026. So anything more specific, I'll turn it over to Jen. So,
Councillor Santos indicated she has a question.
Just a question on the lease agreement. Mentioned here on page 4, in addition to the above base lease rates, 2024 estimates for these, so there's a property tax per square footage, operating costs per square footage, and garbage removal per square footage for an extra, I'm assuming an extra per annum cost of $205,000. Could you explain to me operating costs? What does that mean? The $8.92 per square foot for operating costs?
That's things like utilities, cleaning, garbage, like you said. I don't know, they might have separated it out. Usually it's kind of all grouped together. But it's sort of above and beyond the rent, which goes directly to the building. It's sort of the things to keep things going, money to keep things going.
Okay, so that is not operating costs of the city of Winnipeg for operating the library, like the hiring of the FTEs.
No, it's not for library staffing or
Okay.
personnel. It's cost related to run the building, like keep the lights on, keep the heat on.
Okay, like the mall, to keep the mall.
Yeah.
running, we have to pay our portion.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's what I just need some clarity on that. And then I guess the timeline for the opening of the library in this space, what is the timeline? Because I think we're doing some obviously construction works in there,
Yep.
right? Library materials are going in there. So when is the timeline for opening?
We're hoping for end of 2026.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, construction is construction, but that's a fair estimate at this point.
Okay. I think I'll leave the rest of the questions at community services because I believe there's a BO report coming to community services with respect to operations, right? Is that correct? This is just the municipal, this is just the property aspect of it.
This is just the lease.
The lease,
business
yeah.
part of it, yeah.
But the operations, the FTEs is going to be coming to community services. Okay, I'll leave my questions with respect to that over there.
Yes, I just have a couple points here. In regards to the timeline, 2026, I'm almost certain that was the council direction in the budget, but I feel like it was potentially not 2026.
that's correct, Councillor Duncan. So in the budget, in the detail sheet, there was an expectation to have this library complete at the end of this year by in 2025. But that's not the negotiations, and the lease took much longer than anticipated, and therefore, and the construction is going to take longer than anticipated, and therefore that pushes us into the 2026 guidelines. But so in the budget, it was expectation for our expenses in 2025, but those will be 2026 expenses. So that will be part of the next budget process.
So do we have a month in 2026 that we can expect this to be completed?
We're just saying end of year.
I think that once we sign the lease, the property owner is going to engage the contractor to do the work. We'll have to work with them to get their final schedule. They're the ones that are going to be doing the actual capital upgrades to facilitate this. So we can be more specific in the future and provide updates. But right now, as Jen has indicated, end of 26.
And I do want to just address, I think the only point that I caught from the delegation regarding this specific project was the claim that this is a waste of taxpayer money to invest into a lease space. Could you give us an example of a library and a lease space that would be a good use of taxpayer money?
Jen, do you want to?
Well, we have 6 libraries that we currently lease out of 20, I think. And St. Boniface Library in the heart of St. Boniface is one, and it's not a mall, but a similar kind of building. And we have one Charleswood Library is also leased in a strip mall. So Sometimes like leasing in strip malls where people are coming, there's more traffic, there's more things going on, can be just as good as a standalone, so.
So without a healthy report on how we can determine whether it's a good use of taxpayer money, would it be fair to say that there's good attendance, there's good use of the spaces for programming, that is all seen increases? I look at the numbers and it looks like numbers are heading in the right direction. So any comments on that? I know you're not library services here, but
I think, like you said, just the critical mass of people coming to all of our libraries that are leased are in strip malls and have other businesses joining. So you have families coming, cycling, walking, so lots
they're
of
not
use.
sitting empty.
Definitely not.
Thank you. I believe there was a question. from
Yeah,
Councilor White.
just to be clear, this is a new net increase to the operating budget of the city. This is not replacing an existing library. This is a whole new library, correct?
That's correct.
And what is the annual operating cost predicted to be now in the city?
Related to the lease,
Well, related to the one, I guess, I guess to the lease, but also in terms of any kind of other. There's gonna be the one-time leasehold improvement costs, which I'm assuming will be via the capital budget. Right, and then, so what's our annual operating cost gonna be in terms of this library?
Annual operating cost is about $205,000 for the rent, or sorry, yes,
I want the
for the
total, I want
operating
the
cost.
total staff and staffing and. Fixed
I think we have
costs.
some members of community service here that could potentially provide that.
if Sandra Sawatsky, the asset manager from Community Services could assist with that side, because it's a completely different distinction. I mean, the operating
We're
costs.
setting up a new business here. The cost of a new business, a new location, with all of the fixed costs, including your lease, including your common area charges, including your staffing, including. I'd like to know the one number for all of that.
So Counselor, through the 2024 budget process, the operating budget was actually approved for this library already. It's already.
All right, so
in
you're
place.
telling me you got some money already in the kitty.
We do. Yeah,
Right.
and it looks like, I'm looking at the capital detail sheet, the total operating cost for 2025 was 1.595 million,
1.6
595.
million.
Yeah, 2026 is 1.368.
That seems rather high.
Well, I can't actually speak to the actual cost of a typical library. I'd have to defer to Karen.
What's the square footage we're talking about here?
14,500 square feet.
14,000 square footage, and your annual operating cost is 1.6 million?
It reduces to about 1.4 going forward. So
Oh, why is
initially we
that?
have to staff up and buy the collection as well as, get the
Yeah,
space. set up.
1.4 million, okay, and staff wise, it's on one level, right?
It is.
So you should have, how many staff are we talking about at any given time?
Karen, you're gonna.
That number should be like that.
Can you come to the desk if you can? Thanks.
I can tell you that from the capital detail sheet, the incremental full-time equivalent positions that were noted are 9.77.
FTEs, 9.77,
Yeah.
so we're talking 10 people. Knowing the city of Winnipeg, fully loaded, 100,000. So that's so you're telling me your lease is running at about 500,000 a year? And fixed
A
cost.
little less, yeah, for operating and rent, yeah.
I didn't realize librarians were as expensive as police now.
Well, we're covering,
And firefighters, which I understand why they're expensive. We don't want to have cops on our hands, so you pay our police well. We have firefighters putting their life in danger all the time. But one of the librarians now at $100,000 fully loaded.
what, are you asking me what?
Yeah, I'm wondering why is our costs in terms of labor so high?
Well, it's a combination of, there's one librarian and there are library service assistants in different classifications.
Right?
There are shelvers. And it's not Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, there are evenings and weekend rotations to cover.
So you work evening shifts instead of day shifts. There shouldn't be overtime. There shouldn't be double time. Shift premiums, really?
Yeah.
My goodness. We're wonderful negotiators when it comes to our contract. Not being facetious here. Anyway, so we're at $100,000. Okay. I get it for a manager. I would support a manager at that level if that's even that I would kind of, but anyway, okay, I'm in the wrong business. Carry on. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you very much. I look forward to this library coming to fruition. I know Councillor Sharma is also very excited about it. This would be number 21, correct? Okay. And that's an important number too. It's not number 20. We already have 20 libraries. This is number 21. So that's exciting news.
Nice if EPC got a comparable in terms of staffing costs across Western Canada from what they're in. But anyway, all right, thank you. So that's not, I'm not on the budget work either, but anyway, carry on.
Oh, I think he moved it.
Oh, yes, right.
Oh, yeah, I moved it.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Wyatt. All in favor?
Eyes wide open now.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Appreciate everybody's time this morning on that.
I moved to library.
Sharma is very happy about this. She's been working
Oh, I'm sure she is.
for years to get her done, and that area is growing. We'll move on to number 3, the award of contract for construction, redevelopment of the old X Arena, 80 Sinclair Street.
Yes, so again, we're joined by our project manager, Brent Venuta, and Sandra Swansky for community services, Brad Hudson. So another exciting project. So this is a redevelopment of the old X Arena. This was a council approved project, went out for tender. It closed at 12.3 million, which was above our estimate. And in order to proceed with this award, we're making a recommendation to council to reallocate some existing budget within this rec and library facility investment strategy. It requires, in order for us to proceed, a $1.6 million budget reallocation within that work. And it's that budget results from the Magnus Eliasson Recreation Center kitchen renewal project that was completed under budget. Available staffing monies that were unutilized as part of this project, and also a rescoping of the Millennium Library electrical HVAC and facility maintenance capital program. So with those approvals, and just to remind folks of the work, so this is the construction of a new demolition of a small component, the construction of a new one-story office component building, 8,300 square feet, plus a redevelopment of the old X into an all-weather space. So I'll defer or ask Brent or Sandra if there's anything further we want to highlight for the council, the councilors. Not at this time. Nope, that's the high-level review.
And there's no new dollars going towards this. This is all reallocated from existing budget.
That's correct.
So, that's
What do you mean the last part you said about the closed facility? You said something here about, you said the office component, but then there was something else.
Well, there's on page, I think 4 of the document talks about the scope.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about the demolition of an existing library component plus
Demolition of the arena.
yeah, there won't be, well, maybe I'll defer to Brent on that. So
Sure. So the demolition is for the office addition that was done previously. It's not the arena, but the way
There's your selective demolition of the existing 22, sorry for interrupting. And what's that about?
it's a selective demolition throughout the arena, but principally demolition is the existing first ground floor office space that was, I believe, an addition at one point to the facility.
Why are we selectively demoing a arena? Because that is dynamite.
We're not demoing the arena component. It's the office and admin space.
So,
at
but
the
it
arena.
says selective demolition of the existing 22,600 square foot arena.
Yeah, there is some demolition that has to occur as part of their overall renovation. Because that part is tied to the admin and office space. So there has to be some selective demolition in order to execute the work.
Yeah,
Where
maybe
are
I'll
we-
refer
are we-
to Sandra just to clarify.
The existing ring boards and everything are still in the
The big
space.
thing, what?
Ring boards are still in the space, so we'll be removing the ring boards. We're reconfiguring that existing arena shed.
And what are we doing with the arena?
We're winterizing it, fully insulating it. so
It was not winterized already?
No.
It's not. It's
And it's been
a hockey
decommissioned
arena.
as an arena, right?
Right, so we don't care if the hot air escapes because it helps
Yes.
us maintain the ice.
Yeah.
But
What do we
now
want it, what are we turning it into
we're
then?
turning it into a large multipurpose space to support Wasatch's program.
I can't hear you.
We're turning it into a large multi-purpose programming space to support Wasatch's programming as well as community services programming, community access.
Wasac is a wonderful organization. As a matter of fact, Kevin Chief got his start there before he was in politics, and I helped him out with some of his issues at the time and with the city. I guess the question I have is, what kind of funding are we getting from the province for it?
All of it.
Oh, good. Really wonderful. Okay, good. Well, then I won't have any other questions. Oh, perfect. Somebody.
Do we have a mover?
But I do have a question, I guess. It seems a lot of money. Like, if I was a provincial government, I'd be concerned. I mean, for 8,000 square feet of new office component, which seems rather large to me for Wasac, but I could be wrong. Why is it so high? Why are the tenders coming in ridiculously high? What's going on, Brent, out there?
There's just general escalation inflation since COVID, and then there was things leveled off last year. But now the market we see is escalated again for various reasons.
Well,
It's a lot of
I'm hearing a lot of prices that are going up because of what's been happening. Things south of the border, so. You know, so, this tender closed before all that nonsense?
It had to some extent. I mean, I think there were warning signs, but the tender closed before, yes.
And in terms of I have to ask this question because we've run into this in the past. What sort of guarantees do we have on the work, the performance? We're touching an old building. We've known what that's all about in the past. We're already in the Winnipeg Police Headquarters. We get surprises. What kind of performance guarantees, what kind of bonds do we have in place to protect ourselves? Because we know the province has committed to this level of funding. However, if it goes up, I doubt they will come to the table with a net difference. It'll be us. So what kind of guarantees do we have to protect ourselves?
Well, my answer is the contingency that's been established as part of the overall funding, and that's $985,000 is our cushion for unforeseens.
That's rather low, because I know the public services like contingencies of 20 or 25%. That sounds like a pretty good less.
Well, it all depends on where you are in the project, Counselor. So typically, greenfield projects, you're looking at potentially a 5% contingency. North District Police Station, we constructed that with less than 5% contingency, brought that project forward. This is an 8% contingency that we're carrying on this project, the 985.
But I guess my question is this, we don't have a bond, we don't have a guaranteed, what is the term that was always used? When we did these projects in the past, we got a guaranteed, what was the term used?
I think you might be referring to a guaranteed maximum price.
Right.
But that, we're not using that type of procurement here.
Why not?
It's just we're following the direction of the city's procurement policies.
Yeah, this is the standard design bid build. So we're scoping it
Yeah.
and requested the contractors to respond to the scope. We have a contract with them to deliver that scope of work at this price.
But what happens because of what's happening south of the border? They come back and say, oh, well, I can't do this for this now. What do we do then?
Just one second. So in terms of, if you're talking about any tariff impacts, Counselor, so tariff impacts are part of our general conditions. They will have to, it's impossible for the contractor to claim those as additional costs. They have to demonstrate direct impacts to us. So the due diligence will be done by the public service to address any of those. We have that on every project we have. That's been awarded since.
Have we
I know that
negotiated anything with the province in terms of their funding here to compensate us in the event of that occurs?
not on this project. I believe we're dealing with the budget we have, the 50 million overall with the 50 million.
Yeah.
Overall rec and library strategy, 3-year project. So, but you know, our goal and our you know, is to deliver this project. And if we have to do rescoping as we go along because we've encountered something, we'll have to do that.
When
Any
you
change
say
in,
rescoping, what do you mean?
well, if we have to change the scope of this
Are you
project.
talking about, what's the term used there, something engineering?
I know you don't like the term value engineering,
Value
Counselor,
engineering.
so but
Value engineering.
it's certainly a regular process. We look for potential savings during our designs, but we also look for savings during construction as well.
I would be prepared to move this with a small amendation to the recommendation. To which I would word in a way that it doesn't tie the administration's hands, but gives some direction and to the effect that in the event during the course of construction that the public service finds pressure on pricing related to the tariff, US-Canada trade war, that the public service be encouraged to undertake discussions with the province of Manitoba to compensate the city in the event this leads to higher pricing. And this does not tie your hands.
Yep.
And at the same time, does not limit the project, but at the same time gives you the ability to go to the province and say, by the way, the committee did say this. We do have to call you up if you want. What are you prepared? Are you able to help us? Yeah.
I'll just comment that 2 things that, so definitely our chief financial officer is in discussions on tariff issues, not only within the public service, but within our other exterior government partners. But we're also, the public service is already reporting monthly on tariff impacts. I do recall council's directed that to the finance committee, where that there'll be monthly reporting of tariff impacts as they
That's wonderful to hear. So I just want to make sure that we're also going to the province to let them know the financial impact. If they're funding this project, then they should be aware. Obviously, this project was pursued on the basis that the province wanted to make this happen. And thus they're funding 100% of it, which is very uncommon. And therefore, since they can seem to be our client in a sense on this project, the client should come up with more money in the event the costs rise. And they are 100% our client. We don't mind doing this for them. But those things are out of our control. That would be my suggestion, Mr. Chairperson.
What is the process should this go over the budget ask right now?
So the process would be, we would have to seek council direction. So we could not approve, if an amount comes to us, we'd have to seek direction from council before we exceed the budget. So we're asking for delegated authority within the budget of this $985,000 to deal with construction issues. But if through the course of this project, if we exceed the approved budget by council, we have to come back. So we'll come back. I would believe we'd have to go back to community services and seek more budget through community services. And then potentially an over expenditure through this committee.
So what you're telling me is that this is a provincial project that is being executed by the city of Winnipeg. If for whatever reason it goes over the budget that the province has allocated to this project, that you have to ask for our permission to spend city dollars on it.
That's correct. So we would,
So it wouldn't make a lot of sense for us to then just authorize that. We'd probably put a hold on it, and then at that point in time, go back to the province and say, this is the new cost.
So we'd have to be very careful just about, while we're executing the contract, right? So we've got, and so we'll have to have probably detailed conversations through the public service. If this is on the critical path, we couldn't tell a contractor, cools down for 2-3 months and we'll come back to see you. So we do that every day on every project within the city of Winnipeg. We have to manage these. So that's certainly a reality and a risk. So we'll make sure as part of the project delivery that we're always doing a look ahead, looking at risks, and we know that we have this budget and to exceed this budget, we got to come back to council.
Okay.
So have we negotiated with the province that if there's any sort of jumping in? Have we negotiated with the province if there's any cost overruns that is theirs?
No, not to my knowledge. The funding agreement is the $50 million is a series of projects that are being executed.
50 million for what is this?
It's actually 58 million.
Sorry.
It's the recreation and leisure facility investment strategy that was adopted by council back in 2021.
3-year program.
And it was increased a couple of years ago. They gave us an extra $8 million for this project. So the
Really?
province has been a very good partner on this project.
And this was called what?
The recreation and leisure facility investment strategy. So 3-year capital
And
program.
this was done under the Tories
Correct.
investment strategy.
So there is an overriding contribution agreement that we work within for all of the projects within this pot of money, but we do have a fair bit of ability to allocate within it.
Wonderful.
So
I didn't know. I was away then. I didn't know. So it's wonderful. Maybe I might have found a way to save Happy Land. This is wonderful. Thank you. Great.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. Do we have a mover on this?
So moved, Mr. Chair. There's no amendment, is there?
I'm not in support of the amendment.
No.
I don't, you know what? It sounds like they topped it up with that 58 million. Broadway will top it up.
Councilor Santos moves to the Winnipeg Public Services. Thank you very much. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that is carried. We'll move on to item number 4, the reallocation of the residual fee, Derek. The Facilities Master Plan Capital Program Budget. 25 Health and Safety Emergency Services Refurbishment Citywide Accessibility Capital Program Budget. Thank you. That's lovely.
I know, Councillor, that's so, it's quite a large, so I'm joined with Brenda Kelly, from my team on, dealing with accessibility issues. So this is a request, to reallocate, $60,000 from the Strategic Facilities Master Plan project that's, we're in the process of completing, and there's available budget, and we'd like to request to be transferred to Health Life Safety Capital Program to help execute an accessibility project, and maybe Brenda can tell
A
you.
brief overview here. This is a great project. What I read here, this is a very brief overview.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we were able to obtain funding from the province of $50,000 towards the hearing loop. And what we're trying to do, we've got a list actually of about 33 locations in the city where we could use hearing loops. So
Use
basically,
what?
hearing loops.
Just kidding.
I was gonna.
Starting here.
Over here when you were saying that. Yes, hearing loops. And
I
so
like your glasses.
Thank you, sir. cost for each location is approximately $11,000. So we're just trying to go down the list and put in as many as we can across the facilities.
Great. Mover?
So just out of curiosity, just for the record, I know we as a council used to have an accessibility grant for improving infrastructure for accessibility. Then Brian Bowman decided to combine the Human Rights Committee with the Accessibility Committee. And then lo and behold, then the disappearance of the grant. And that money's gone. So we are doing one-offs here now when we used to have a capital program for accessibility infrastructure. Is that fair to say?
I think it's been rolled up. So the accessibility coordinator reports within the corporate AMO, and the funding for that is amalgamated within the MA capital budget.
Yeah, so everything's funded under life safety, and then, so it's, that's why it's such a long name. There used to council before the multi-year budget process. There were multiple streams of funding, and now we've collapsed that down to just one program, and MA.
Jets fans.
Go Jets go. Well, there we, so we've amalgamated the accessibility elements within the capital program. So
He's on the door closed, please.
Yeah, we're okay.
No, I just worked because I can't hear. But we don't have a capital line item anymore that either, in the past, it was not just city facilities that would apply for funding, but it was we encouraged not-for-profit groups, people who offer services that are similar to city services, basically community capacity. We don't have a grant program anymore like that, right?
Not specifically, but we do still reach out within the community and they do look at projects that we look at within the accessibility that may
Oh, do you?
be. Yes, we do. We're very.
I have an organization that actually is looking for some dollars to do some accessibility improvements, the Transcona Business Improvement Zone, is there?
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. Nikki Burbank is the new executive director, wonderful woman. Yeah, that would be great, and they would be happy to talk to you about that. Thank you. Appreciate it. Your timing is wonderful. Thank you.
Councillor, are you prepared to move on? Okay.
Absolutely.
Take public service recommendation moved by Councillor Wyatt. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, and that is carried. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much.
5, unsafe condition and response team pilot project.
Rick and Kelly are joining
Okay,
us to
great.
discuss this. But we're mainly looking for a notice of extension, which was sent to Ms. Cohen on April 29,
That's for 30 days.
asking for the report to be resubmitted for the June SPCPD meeting.
Okay.
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll move the public service recommendation extension to 30 days.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's carried. Councillor Wyatt, how would you like to be recorded on 30-day extension?
Which one?
This is item number 5, unsafe conditions response team pilot project.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. I don't see any issue, but
Be back in June.
pardon me?
You'll be back in June.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
That's fine.
I would say unanimous. Moving
Number
on.
6.
Item number 6, amendments to the MBEA enabling bylaw. Thank you for the public service going back and doing additional consultation on this, perhaps a brief overview.
Sure, yeah, and thank you, Councillor Duncan, for arranging for that meeting. I think a opportunity that we have to be transparent with the industry, I think is a good opportunity, so I appreciate that. So the MBEA amendments to the enabling bylaw. Just a brief overview, the regulations that are in the MBEA bylaw, as well as the ones that are proposed today. These aren't new regulations, they're existing, basically bylaws that the city enforces and currently does through POA or other means. All that's happening is they're expanding these abilities to enforce through a ticketing program. So again, they're nothing new, it's just a different method of carrying out enforcement.
Right.
And so the new approach basically was to say, we had some existing bylaws that we enforced through tickets back in 2017. And then we wanted to look at expanding that through the different bylaws. Again, these are just tools that we don't always have to use or use indiscriminately, but that are available to support our enforcement services units when they have, again, typically problem properties or individuals that are just not applying to the bylaws. So again, how this plays out with industry is, for the most part, industry doesn't see our enforcement services unit, right? They engage in inspections because they operate within the rules. They take out permits, they wait for them to get issued, they call for inspections, they do all that work. That's a very iterative process. A lot of tools for the inspectors to engage in. They do have BVNs or bylaw violation notices. They have discussions. This is, again, very iterative. It's if it gets escalated, that's where the enforcement services unit gets involved. And typically by that time, if there's problems, they're significant problems. And those eat up a lot of our enforcement services time. And that's why the ticketing is a very effective program that allows us to reduce the amount of time that our enforcement services is spending on certain individuals. So open for questions if you have any or further discussion.
These are net new, right?
37 new proposed.
And then there, so that there's amounts that are beside them.
So
Is that consistent with like some of the other contraventions that we issue under the MBEA? Or are these like higher, lower, like?
So the MBEA allows for each infraction to have a set fine
up to $1,000. It can be less as determined by council ultimately. And then there can be an early payment option. Again, that's not necessarily always equal to half. It can be set by council at the time. So $1,000 or whatever we've, some of these are $250, some are $500. They're in line with sort of the level of the offense. I can use that phrase. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Wyatt.
Just to be clear, we're still operating under the, I guess, the mantra regimen because of funding of operations or lack thereof of a complaint-based system.
Complaint-based?
Yeah, complaint-based.
Yes, but as Mr. Clausen has pointed out, we also will take the escalation referrals from within the departments.
Yes, right, of course.
So it's still a complaint of, per se, but it's coming from within.
Yeah, but it's not where we're all proactively doing the enforcement.
At this time, we don't have the resources
We don't have the resources.
for that
So-
in any
And we're
meaningful
kind of
way.
still waiting on the whole consolidated bylaw enforcement unit, which in and of itself probably could fund itself based on the fines out there with regards to violations of bylaws, which are extensive, especially if we review a lot of the other bylaws in the city and the fines we have that have been reviewed for a long time. But anyway, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Mover.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Santos, the public service recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Item number 7, Mrs.
Favors,
Graffiti.
not graffiti.
On vacant buildings, we had a healthy discussion at the last meeting. Before we get into this, this was brought forward at a community center by Councillor Gilroy. Has there been any communication with Councillor Gilroy on either side of this table to get further clarification?
Yeah.
What's the gist of her take on this? Like, what is she trying to say?
Okay,
I don't
so,
understand.
Yeah, and I won't speak for her, but my
She's not here.
takeaway from it was that Councillor Gilroy would like to see the public service approach owners of these vacant derelict buildings with a contract to allow the city to remove graffiti.
The way I read it though is she wants us to waive that requirement so that we don't have to approach them. We just do it. That's the way I like to free up resources that way.
And I think
That's the way I read
if I recall correctly,
Not to contradict the chair, but I just.
No, that's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, I appreciate it.
if I call the conversation, it was really specific to vacant buildings. To vacant buildings and graffiti on vacant buildings, because where it's not a vacant building, then we generally have an owner we can talk to,
Correct.
or not we, but city can talk to.
And the issue that we ran into at the last meeting was, we do have Mr. Havlicek here. However, it is not within his scope to go and do this. This would be more public works on
Yes, correct.
public property. So we don't have,
Public and private.
No problem.
But the issue at hand is the city wouldn't just go onto a private property
we
to
can't.
do the removal without permission.
Right, we always get a waiver.
And I think that, and again, I think that was where it was
yeah,
headed.
so I'm at a point now, I don't want to change the recommendation here to get away from what Councillor Gilroy's intentions are. I think that it needs to come back with a more practical motion here that we can actually execute on, because I don't know where we would draw the line on the city going onto private property and start to do graffiti removal.
Under the vacant and derelict building bylaw, we could ask the province for an amendment. But I think that would be a legislative requirement here to be able to access private property without getting a waiver, because it's very, the legislation is very prescribed. I don't know. I don't know if this is a bylaw issue, I guess I'm saying, or a legislative issue.
I'm also hesitant on getting into the business of removing graffiti from private property and having to incur that.
We do that all the time.
Operating costs as a city as a whole, though. Like, where do we draw the line?
Well, we do that all the time, Mr.
I know that there's funding in place to do it, but what you're saying here and what I'm reading here is that we would just go onto private property and start removing graffiti.
Well,
So
I think
then
that-
our responsibility.
Maybe we can massage the motion and say something to the effect that, and we already have with the vacant building bylaw, the ability to incur or the ability to apply fees and charges, fines. That maybe we include that, the ability, we right now, for example, if we see somebody who has not cut their grass, right? We go out, we cut their grass, if they refuse, we put it on the property tax bill. We can do the same thing with graffiti removal. We can just say, we as a city have prioritized this should be done. And we will put it on your property tax bill. Either you work with us to remove it, or if you don't, we go on, we do it, it's on your tax bill. I mean, they're basically a bit of a stick and carrot and stick.
Well, that's a little different. Graffiti has like gangs tied to it and all that stuff. When you cutting grass, it takes like months before you can actually, the city gets in there. You don't want to be leaving graffiti on vacant buildings for much longer than it needs to be. And
You seen the city lately?
I kind of sympathize or empathize with Councillor Gilroy and some of the challenges her ward and my ward face with
Yeah.
tags.
Yep.
Being on there for long periods of time. So there's gotta be a middle ground. There's gotta be a way you guys can report back on some of the challenges with their current bylaws, like without actually changing anything, but just how can we get onto private property? What are the costs to do that? You know, there's gotta be some kind of task. We got a property task force. Why can't we do something with graffiti as well?
I have two members of public service here anxiously awaiting to provide comments and
Sure. I just like to do a quick overview of all of the systems out there right now on this topic. And Councillor Gilroy was asking us specifically to add to the application for a vacant building an automatic waiver for graffiti removal. So that's one thing I want to say. And then also just to outline the existing tools that are out there, Public Works has a graffiti control page on the city website right now. The Exchange District Biz has a graffiti removal program. The Historical Resources branch of the city provides information for local cleaning services like advanced environmental, especially for historical resources. And then the vacant building bylaw does not regulate graffiti on declared vacant buildings right now. The building and zoning bylaws do not regulate graffiti. The neighborhood livability bylaw does not regulate graffiti, and the historical resources bylaw does not regulate maintenance issues for listed historical resources. So just for a framework for like the constraints we're within.
Okay, great. I hear where, and I appreciate the comparison with the mowing of the grass. I think that we could put this at some point in time into something with neighborhood livability, or something through Public Works. I'm not sure how it fits here necessarily.
Well, if I can make a suggestion, I don't think. So Hazel, would you have any objection if we put forward an amendment to the bylaw to say that access to property be granted for automatically for graffiti removal in the event that they're vacant and the building is bylaw is being enforced? I didn't see any objection there from your side, because at the end of the day, it's not your department that does the cleaning anyways, Public Works. This is just a small amendment. I don't see it being an issue, especially if we're doing enforcement already.
We would want to consult with community services because they're the entity, they're the department that actually administers the vacant buildings bylaw. Even though it resides under the umbrella of PP&D, it's
All right, okay, I get it. Okay, so then I'll move, Mr. Chairman, that we consider the councilor's recommendation and maybe let the public service report back. Sorry, I wasn't getting angry over what you said, sir,
Again,
but I was just like the layers.
I would perhaps turn to our clerk to see, I need guidance on how we can
Refer to the public service.
move forward with this so that one department can make a recommendation. It doesn't sound like Mr. Havlicek and his team can move it.
we can certainly have a joint, bring something jointly back with community services.
Clerk,
But sorry.
can I just hear from the clerk here? I said let's go ahead.
If the committee wanted to report back, you could direct the public service to provide that report. And then if the enforcement aspect required community services to be here, they could be here to speak to that.
So specific to wording, if we want to report back from property development, community services and public works, could we direct them to do that?
You don't need, generally the committee says like the Winnipeg Public Service and then whoever is required in order to provide that report, as long as it's within the committee's jurisdiction, as long as what's being requested is within this
Okay.
committee's jurisdiction.
So the committee is looking to have a report back on how we can have a bylaw amendment to have graffiti removal enforced. And before, yes, I see nodding heads and then a comment from the director here.
Just one quick comment. So Councillor Gilroy's specific request was just to add to the application for
Right.
a vacant building, an automatic waiver for public access for graffiti removal.
We're asking you to
So-
consider that, look at that, come back to the recommendations.
But yeah, and so instead of a bylaw amendment, which would take longer, just to change that one thing about the application for vacant buildings. But since that application doesn't sit with PPD,
No, we heard the clerk. Clerk said, you guys take it back, coordinate it, bring it forward.
okay.
We can explore that. That's what I heard.
So it's not necessarily a bylaw amendment, it's a
Well, it is
procedural.
I think maybe it
procedural
is,
amendment.
maybe it is bylaw amendment, maybe it's not, we will see.
Okay, yeah.
Procedural amendment, but not limited to a bylaw amendment.
Sorry,
Necessarily.
Yes.
is there an application for a vacant building? My understanding is the
Communities.
I don't know. I
There's
just
a
that's
form they fill out, I guess.
Oh, okay.
I'll move referral to the public service and report back within how much time?
Can I just get wording clear here from the clerk, so that we get this right, so that we don't come back and say it's not my department, because I feel like this might go round and round here if we don't get it right.
Just confirming what the committee would like the report back on. Would you like the public service to report back on what Councillor Gilroy has put forward, or would you like a different wording?
What Councillor Gilroy has reported back, or had in her therefore be it resolved, and is there any type of like wording that we need to change in that?
Yes, we can build on that if it needs to go into a bylaw amendment, so.
Okay, so the public service will
Start
report
with
back on Councillor Gilroy's motion there.
120 days?
That works. Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys working through this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Get an extra month and a half because of the summer.
I'll need it. Up to 120 days, sorry, that was your, yes? Okay. All right,
After the next one, I need big one.
item number 8 is amendments to the street name bylaws. Oh,
We have Gordon Chappelle and Angie Savage here to discuss
I'll be
this.
fit.
Good, how are you?
Good to see you.
okay, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We'll have an overview here. I think this is,
Good to see you, but better to see you.
I appreciate you folks taking it away and putting some thought to it and making some additional recommendations here. So we'll let you do a brief overview and then I think this is what the committee was looking for way back when, November.
Can I just quickly make one mention here? The report was prepared by Michelle Hammerberg, who I'm sure that you've all had emails from her over the years. She's retiring at the end of this month,
Oh,
which is
yeah, that's
pretty much the reaction everyone's had in the department.
What's going on there?
So huge loss for the city, really happy for her. But I just wanted to take a moment just to acknowledge her contribution for the past 37 years.
How many?
37.
Years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, really happy for her. And this is her baby. She put this one together. So we're gonna present it.
Thank you for showing that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so the public service was asked to report back on the proposed amendment to the street names bylaw to include a condition that community committees must not add names of sitting elected officials to the street name reserve list. The street names bylaw was first adopted in 2011 to address the lack of consistent and transparent processing for street names. Prior to this, the process was largely informal. Community committees often approved street names without confirming whether or not there were conflicts. To improve clarity, consistency, and due diligence, the bylaw established formal procedures.
It outlines clear requirements and approval pathways to ensure that street names are not duplicated or conflicting, to avoid confusion for emergency services, mail delivery, and the general public. Names and culturally and historically appropriate. They are clear and logical, aiding navigation and wayfinding, and that they align with municipal addressing standards, GIS mapping, 911 emergency response protocols, and Canada Post requirements. This bylaw has not been reviewed since its original enactment in 2011. In addition to the chair's motion, the Public Service has proposed a number of amendments, most of which are housekeeping in nature, to update and improve the bylaw. The key highlights of the proposed amendments include extending the term for honorary street name designations or assignments by His Worship Mayor Gillingham from 5 years to 10 years. Removing the requirement to submit legal plans and registration agreements, as these are no longer required by the Winnipeg Land Titles Office. Allowing the Public Service to remove outdated street names from reserve lists without a formal report of those names now in conflict with others. This addresses legacy issues from before when the bylaw was in effect. And this would also include consultation with those who originally requested those names. It also highlights allowing the transfer of street names on a reserve list to the appropriate community committee without a report in the event of a ward boundary change. Emphasizing that new street names or renamings must not impair emergency response services. Public safety must remain top priority. Adding to the new goal to the bylaw that acknowledges the integral contributions of Indigenous peoples as the original peoples of this land, recognizing their ongoing relationship to the land, and supports and promotes Indigenous language reclamation. And finally, updating the Appendix B to include a graphic illustration of the French language version of the honorary street sign topper. This report was prepared in consultation with Legal Services and the Indigenous Relations Division. Indigenous Relations Division has also advised that the street names bylaw currently falls outside of their scope of the Welcoming Winnipeg policy. However, Council recently directed them to undertake a coordinated review of the Welcome Winnipeg policy, and the street names bylaw will be included in that review. We anticipate additional revisions in the future to this bylaw once we begin our consultation with them.
I have a couple concerns about the bylaw.
Sure, Councilor Wyatt.
I guess my first concern is that a designated employee will have the ability to remove street names from a reserve list if the name conflicts with other street names. That's a delegated authority that you're asking for. And I have concerns about that because, you know, councillors will have made commitments, will have made promises, they'll be on a list, and all of a sudden it'll disappear, and then they'll go to put the name on a street. Oh, well, that councillor, that name was removed. Sorry. Well, when did that happen? Will be the issue, and the SOL will hit the fan. And so I have a concern about that. I also have a concern about all of this. It started off it wasn't always the policy. The problem is I've been here a long time, was that we never had this emergency responding sounding system before. We put street names on, and then all of a sudden somebody decided that, oh, a name sounds like the next name. Well, the emergency vehicles, somebody can call in and hang up the phone, but they could hear it clearly. You know, well, all of that is now nonsense. It really is when you think about it. Number one, the city of Calgary, go to their subdivisions. If it's, let's say, Oak Park Way, they got Oak Park Place, Oak Park Way, Oak Park this, Oak Park that, and they seem to be responding to emergencies quite well. And they don't seem to have a problem. Secondly, the technology has changed with people when you call in, they call in on their phone. The phone indicates where they are. We can track people. We can track locations like never before. All of this stuff that we have to sound out a name for the emergency services when the city of Calgary has literally street after street exactly the same. And they seem to respond to the emergencies quite well. They don't seem to have a problem. I just think it's a nonsense. We came up with this system and it's crazy. Oh, well, it sounds like this one, Counselor. And then we gotta invent a name. Well, maybe the person was I don't know, a private in the armed services, so we'll call it private such and such street. Now it's, oh, sounds okay. You know, I've had to go through all of this in the past, right? To try to have people come forward, they want a street, they want it. Is there a way we can just drop that? It's so ridiculous. It really is, because the technology has changed. Other cities seem to be surviving. I think this is a budget. That's just a make work project for us, really.
Actually, my first coming into land development in 2008, I had researched documents going back to the late 90s.
Yeah.
And my predecessors did check with emergency services, Winnipeg paramedics,
Yes.
for sound-alike conflicts. So that check has been ongoing. They also had.
We made more official later on or something.
That's right, yeah. So, and the sound-alike conflicts, if there were to be a proposal to remove a name because there's a conflict, what we do right now is we would contact you. Administration would contact you if it was a proposal by you. And we would say, this is in conflict with a name that you have right now on the reserve list. And this new name
Contact
is
the
going
counselor.
forward.
Is that a policy or is that just your practice?
It's, if you were the applicant, we would contact you. That's what the bylaw
Okay,
requires us to do right now.
But sometimes counselors search for trouble. Sometimes counselors pass names that they're not technically the applicant, the developer is, but the counselor is passing it because now the other thing we started to do is to charge for this.
Right.
And all of a sudden now counselors are being threatened to be charged a name to be added on the list. They got to take it out of their funding and everything, which is ridiculous. But anyway, putting that aside, what could we have a policy here that no matter what, prior to a name being removed, that the counselor has to be contacted? We do that.
Yeah, just, I appreciate the removal by delegated authority and how that might be sensitive to some that have set names forward in the past. I refer back to how we used to hear all the MLCC applications at community committee, and now the process is that it still occurs. It's in consultation with the area councillor. Perhaps the removal could be, instead of going through the formal committee, it could be prior to the removal of any names on the list, that it could be in consultation with the area
I would take it a step further, that there has to be a sign. Basically the counselor has to sign off.
So, if I may, the
Because it should have been on the list in the first place.
the process at present is that we contact the applicant who paid for the application.
Yeah, I know.
So it could be the ward counselor or it could be a citizen. And we keep track of their contact names and numbers and we consult with them. Oftentimes the names that, there's over 2,000 names that are sitting on that list right now.
Yeah.
Some of them date back to the 70s and 80s
Yeah,
that was
you like to
populated.
contact the applicant, right? Yeah.
We try to contact the applicant. Some have been deceased. This is mostly targeted for the names that are sitting on that list that now new names have come forward, say from counselors or whatever, that are in conflict with those names on the reserve list. And since those names have not been chosen, we reach out to let them know that, is it okay if we can remove that name?
I would support this, Mr. Chair, if we have it so that the counselor, whether it be a counselor or a counselor prior has put the name on the list or it's come from a third party, the counselor, period, of the ward has to sign off. And the reason I say that is that requires a counselor to stop and give it a serious thought and do a bit of research in some cases. Because they don't know, sometimes counselors lost some institutional knowledge, new counselors coming on board, old counselors going, don't know what promises were made. That pushes the counselor from the area to go back and do some research. Sometimes it's involving talking to local people who knew those people outside of what the public service would be able to do. But it makes the requirement on the counselor so that in the event somebody comes along and says, where's that street name I was promised in that development, which is finally happening now, which didn't happen for 30 years, but now it's happening and I was promised a street name. Now it's off. The counselor is accountable and should be accountable. And in my opinion, because I got myself one time, I took a name off not thinking and then found out, oh, geez, so I had to race back and get it readdressed. And a predecessor of mine did the same thing. And I had to address that issue, right? So the accountability mechanism here on the elected official, I should be there. Not to hold things up, but to make sure that some caution is given, not just to throw things out because, the applicant is dead or what have you, no longer around. But the problem is that people still, they may remember something, we just don't know, right? We gotta have the right contact. So anyway, that's my thought.
What's the implication to this? If there's two streets that are similar and the counselor weighs in, what happens with the other street? That if they choose one, they choose street A, what happens with street B? Do they move? You're saying the council will decide.
If the counselor signs off, the counselor, you're requesting the counselor, let's say street A has to be gone. You're requesting street B stay, but A has to go. You need the counselor to sign off. In the event that the counselor doesn't sign off, you're neither naming street A or street B up by the sounds of it because of emergency services. Right? That's the counselor's choice.
So neither gets used.
Right, based on the fact that's a hard line that you guys have drawn. We will not pass this line in the event it sounds the same. The counselor can't put it on a street.
It's not actually a hard line. When we do not support an application for a street name that's in conflict, we still present it to community committee, and some of them have been flipped.
Flip to community committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
For example, Transcona Boulevard.
Really?
Yes.
How does that sound like something?
It was in direct conflict with Tascona in Royalwood. And it.
Transcona? I don't know.
We still went.
I haven't heard hearing, but it sounds a lot different than.
Isn't there a Strathcona and Stratcona?
Yes.
I think a cab took me to the wrong location one time.
Well, then you had a few.
I mean, it happens.
You were paying attention.
It happens.
Yeah. Anyway, so listen, okay, well. Can we think about this one and lay it over? Is there a rush
Like for
this
lay
being
over the
adopted? Is there a
entire
rush?
document?
No, I just lay this report over for the next meeting. Is there a rush to adopt this today? Can I give some more thought, Mr. Chairperson?
I mean, give it as much thought as you want. I have more questions just in regards to the whole referral and inclusion. Responsibilities are going with the Welcome Winnipeg committees.
No, the public service doesn't have a concern with your recommendation to filter through counselors.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Councillor White, I agree with you too. If there's a list and the public service goes through, filters through and wants to recommend that some be removed, it's either by delegated authority as they're recommending, or send the list over to me and you and the other 15 counselors who are in that area, that particular area, and have their say. But we need to also, I want like some sort of timeline on response from the counselor.
Oh, I agree.
Minimum or maximum 30 days.
I
They have to get
I
back.
agree.
Because we need to keep this ball rolling.
For clarity,
Yeah.
this would not happen very often.
Right.
So I'll move that the approval of report subject to the change.
I have some
sorry,
questions
sorry.
in regards to, so, Ms. Savage, if we could just go over the Welcome Winnipeg piece. I do have some concerns with that, considering that we just discussed Welcome Winnipeg and consultation with a third party there on how we could, I suppose, clear things up so that there's not these long delays and that people don't feel like they're being tasked with additional work outside of the original scope of work that was being passed to Welcoming Winnipeg.
I'm sorry to remember. Can I just quick, where's the Welcoming Winnipeg?
it's a recommendation by the Public Service Landers.
Not in this report, but it's a separate recommendation that went through March 27th with council.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we don't see this amendments to street names end up being, hey, welcoming Winnipeg, here's another street name for you to consider. That's I do not support that.
No.
In any way. There is a mandate that was set out. If that mandate changes through a complete overlook of the purpose of that committee, then great. But I don't want to add more work to their plate with street naming as a whole, even to go to them, but that group at all.
And we just met with them this week and we also explained the resourcing
Yeah.
Constraints that we have with that as well.
Yeah.
And we've committed to work together to come up with some type of a solution, but it's in its very infant stage right now. They do not know what proposed changes they might make at this point. It's something that we're going to discuss going forward.
So-
But one of the ideas that they floated was maybe a committee creates a pool of names that can be selected from for Indigenous naming. And then that way it doesn't hold up applications for subdivisions and things like that. But at this time, it will not have any impact on our bylaw right now.
It was just for names being proposed.
Yes.
So anything that did come forward that was Indigenous based would have a process to follow. So it had nothing to do with a certain requirement of, 20% of names in the subdivision require to be Indigenous related.
So, but the policy that was set out in Welcoming Winnipeg's mandate, did it ever have street names? I thought it was just parks.
It's just.
So why are we
So
talking about this?
why are we talking about this? Yeah, I'm confused.
Because one of the changes that was in the bylaw,
What bylaw?
in the street names bylaw.
When was that done?
So in the street names bylaw, under section, under the appendix A, which talks about the goals, F had referred to, it listed as pioneer. So we consulted with Indigenous Relations to change F completely. And F said to recognize the integral contributions of Indigenous peoples as the original peoples of this land and contemporary context in which Indigenous peoples continue to have a relationship with this land and to promote Indigenous reclamation of language. So all that means is that we were adding another layer to our goals that we want to achieve. But right now, the process, anytime an Indigenous name would ever be proposed, which I think we've only had one or two, we filter that through IRD. We have those consultations with them because we want them to make that decision whether or not the name is appropriate. That would not necessarily be our role. And right now, that hasn't held up any applications because there's only been very few. And that would continue to be status quo. That process would not change.
Council Wyatt?
I have strived since being in office to try to push myself to name streets. We've had a heck of a lot. I've tried to push for more women to be recognized. I've pushed for Indigenous. I've pushed for people of Asian descent, of all backgrounds, right? And I just see that as common sense of an elected official who's living in the 21st century to push for diversity and for the naming. I don't need a bylaw to tell me how to do my job. And I guess this is the problem when I had Ms. Gerbasi, who moved this motion back in the day, to say, oh, well, here we go. We're regulating a system that was working good before. The area councillors are in touch with the community. And that's, and I think we're held accountable to that now. As rightfully so, people want to see us to recognize diversity. There are the rednecks of the world who don't believe in that. I remember when I tried to name Mahatma Gandhi, and we get people in the middle of the night calling me drunk, angry that I was doing it. I told them, no, I'm doing it. You know, of course, they took it off because they wanted it in downtown Winnipeg, and then, of course, they were backing the wrong mayor for Canada and they never got the street. But anyway, that's another story. But, you know, I don't need to have section A 22-1. I don't need even section 1. It should be just gone. I don't need to be told, you know, I've named floral fauna, you know, whitetail, like the provincial, you know, parks and streets. And I've seen other councillors do it. You know, like, you know, Nellie McClung. Councillor Jabassi got mad when I put her on our street in reservist before she put it on hers. You know, I mean, like, you know, this is common sense, and it just makes me, we've overregulated it now. You know, can we just drop section 1 and all its wording and drop section 2-1? This stuff is just common sense. An elected official stands on these things and has been knowing, you know, that I've named names that people will say, well, you know, well, and I've tried to not forget people too. We had Transcon had an engineer who literally went to Moscow, and the Soviet Union oversaw the dismantling of atomic bomb. A physicist. We named his feet out. Nobody would have. But anyway, so
I guess 2 points there. So that section is very broad, so it's not restricted.
section.
The one that Angie just read from,
Yeah.
in terms of what we're striving for. And second, the bylaw isn't for 16 elected officials, and it's for the entire city.
That's what I mean.
Right? No, but I think just because it's common sense to you doesn't mean it's common sense to anyone else. Like we're thinking of the general public and councillors, right? So the bylaw has to work for everyone.
So appendix A, section 1.
But the councillors are the ones putting it on the list, right? They're
I
the ones
realize
putting it on.
that.
The buck
realize.
stops there. Somebody may apply.
But we want guidance from the public.
So Councillor Wyatt, just to your concerns, and I don't disagree, we don't want to overregulate here, but so as I noted, appendix A, section 1, 18, it does note that whatever was previously written there would be replaced with, most importantly, street names and honorary street names should meet at least one of the following goals. It doesn't say all.
Yeah.
So I mean, like if you can't, and I don't mean you personally, if any person applying for this, whether it be a councillor or a citizen, can't meet any of these goals, I don't know what they're trying to accomplish. Again, my concern, and I have clearly struck a nerve here, that I just do not want to see every single street name be piled onto Welcoming Winnipeg at any point in time.
No, that's not the point. Yeah, that wouldn't be what the outcome.
And we can't do that. It would.
Why are we
hold
even
up our
talking about
applications.
this? That's what I don't understand.
Right.
When an indigenous names gets referred as like an applicant uses an indigenous name, so as opposed to public service saying yes or no, they would consult with IRD to ensure that name is appropriate to be added to the street reserve list.
IRD is different than Welcoming Winnipeg.
They would filter it through.
Pardon me?
They would filter it through Welcome
Why?
Winnipeg.
Why? Who told them to do that?
If it's indigenous based, we can rely on indigenous.
No. Welcoming Winnipeg policy was set up by council. Welcoming Winnipeg was set up for the purpose of park naming. Nothing to do with streets. Why is IRD deciding to write their own policies here?
They're not. It's a consideration that
But that's,
Will be-
no, they're writing their own policy. They're going to Welcoming Winnipeg if that's what the chairman's saying.
well, they aren't right now, but they're proposing in the future that it would
Oh, this is
align
coming to
with
council.
welcoming
You guys can deal with this at IUC. I'm sure you.
Again, that is a completely separate discussion that they want to bring forward.
Welcoming Winnipeg's having a hard enough time naming indigenous parks, never mind. There's tons of parks available out there that we've approved that have no names that they can name. I'm prepared to work with them.
It's not vetting through Welcoming Winnipeg. It's simply just proposing to set up a process for when an indigenous name comes forward, that it's appropriate.
And that's what IRD is for,
Yeah, and that's what we did.
Yeah.
right? So.
Yeah.
All right. Now, quick question, sir. Question I had do you have a process already within the bylaw that says, okay, when a council wants a name that they can clearly identify on a plan, on a map, is that part of your Is that in the bylaw right now? Because it seems to be kind of loosey-goosey right now. So I'll come to community committee and I'll write on a map here, I want the street name here. But it's not really, it's kind of like we formalized everything else but the actual naming of where it goes, so.
The process is that you have to have the name itself approved for that community.
On the
first.
list, right? I know
And
that.
then a developer, or if you have asked the
Committee.
developer to identify it on their plan, it will be on their legal Mylar plan when they submit that.
But that should not be the process. The process has been in the past where community committee set forwards the list. Here's the names, here's the subdivision, here's the names. That's what we're approving now.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
But the street naming process is completely separate from a subdivision process.
Oh, no, I agree. That's my point though, that either at the time of subdivision, which we've done that, or after, typically that's when it happens. That the names are put on the streets, but there's no formal process has been approved for that.
Yeah.
Is there?
Street gets
Okay, so no, but in terms of you're missing my point, Angie. In terms of the paperwork, a counselor shall put the street name on the list by submitting it to community committee. Everything else is prescribed except that.
Well, once community committee approves it, it automatically goes onto your list.
You're missing my point, Angie. I'm
So-
talking about the street going on to the name going on the physical street.
Oh, like
on
the sun
map.
tower.
Yes.
It can't go up until that plan is registered. with
I
the street
understand
name.
that, but there's,
Sorry, may I just intervene here? So the community committee and council has the ability to interact with respect to the naming of the street name list. But that doesn't, when a developer is proposing to take from the street name list and put it onto their subdivision streets, that doesn't go back to council. We have to reduce the number of
it's like
times.
community committee, Madam Chair, or Madam Director. Community
Doesn't-
committee is the one that does that.
No, community committee
Oh,
can
then what's
only
the whole point
approve
of
the
the
name
exercise?
for your list. And you can include a map when it gets approved of where you'd like that street name located.
Council has community committee has a final say. Always has and always should have. And we're the ones who approve the names and where they go.
You approve the names, but not where they go.
Yes, we do.
Well,
Done it forever. I've done it for 20 years.
but for sequencing, when you apply for a subdivision, the name has to be approved before it gets plotted onto a plan.
Yes, and-
And then the plan gets registered and then the street sign goes up. So that discussion is between you and the developer where you want that sign to go. It does not come back to community committee. And when a subdivision is proposed, sometimes that street name is not on the plan yet, showing where it's gonna go.
We need to get clarity on this because this is not good.
So,
Well, we need right now, basically what we have by the sound of it, what we have all for all that we've done all this work. We've written all these policies with regards to street naming. But by the sound of it, at the end of the day, it's really the developer or the applicant or whoever's building the street who actually has some control of it. And if they don't put it on the Mylar, it doesn't matter what we put on our street name reserve list. They can pick a different name off the list and put it there to the objection of the counselor for the area. Why do we even have the bylaw now? Doesn't make any sense. We've done all this work, but at the end of the day, the developers come in and out, right? They're building homes, but they're not building communities.
The process challenge though.
Our job as elected officials of the standing committee and the community committee, we're the ones who take into consideration community clubs, fire halls, parks. Developers will come in and if they could get away with it, they put not a dime into any of that stuff. Some developers, most developers, some of the biggest are like that. And so I always say, you're going in and out, you got your profit, fine, profit's not a bad word, but we build community. We're here for the long haul. So it's really us who should be on behalf of the community as a democratic representative democracy saying, we want to ensure the diversity in terms of street names. We're the ones who should be signing off. The list should be there. The map should be there. The community committee should be approving that. It's always blowing me away that we have this whole rule, all this rule system. We sound it all out, but then at the end of the day, here you go, Mr. Developer. do what you like.
The
And by the way,
process,
yeah,
the
we'll see you
process
after.
challenge is that the legal plan does not lawfully exist at the time that you approve a street name.
Right,
So we cannot enforce that street name get put on this specific location unless if that wording is actually in the subdivision approval before anything.
well, now we're
goes through.
getting some,
And that
now
is a
we're getting-
completely separate process from the street.
well,
name.
now we're getting somewhere, maybe that's what we should be doing. Because right now there's a total disconnect, it's just, it's crazy, but anyway, I mean. Yeah, I guess the other part of this that I'm concerned about is that I'm still concerned about the sounding issue and everything else, I just don't understand.
Mr. Chair, for you, I think I do like if counselors feel the need to attempt to put a street name on a specific physical location, it would be much preferred that that be as part of the subdivision approval process because, you know, we do have the desire to speed development up in the city as opposed to send things back to community committee once they're actually ready to get shovels in the ground. And
Well, I think you've got me worried about some developments I just approved, so I better get on top of this stuff.
so, you know, trying to
Well,
streamline
I'm not sure.
the timeframes would be much appreciated.
Okay, is there an appetite to move on this at this point in time?
I will on the subject to the signing off of counselors 30 days that you said pertaining to removal of names.
For the
It's-
clerk, sorry,
It's at bottom of page 8.3 is, I think, the clause that you want amended.
Yeah, but I want to add in the requirement for a sign off from the council.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if we can just make that amendment now.
Sure.
So, I'm gonna paraphrase here, street names of the reserve, more than 10 years from date of approval. Need to be in conflict. Another name on the reserve list shall be removed by the designated employee, it ends there. And we wanted to say subject to approval from what?
So shall be removed by the designated employee in consultation with the local area counselor within 30 days of the recommendation.
Written sign off.
Does that work?
Yeah, written sign off.
You say consultation, you're saying written sign off.
I was saying consult and get the sign off. Yeah.
So is
Okay,
that
just
approval?
say sign off, or, okay, for formality.
Because otherwise, what's the 30
Let's
days?
just make sure we get the right word in here,
Yeah,
and I'll turn to the clerk for this. What would what would the recommendation be to have it crystal clear that the counselor has signed off on this?
Approval.
Are you, I was gonna say, would you be okay, counselors in public service with subject to approval from the area counselor? And then including something to indicate that the counselor must respond within 30 days?
Sure, period. The counselor must respond within 30 days.
In rate.
Yes, in writing within 30 days. Do we want to go to as far as say, otherwise the name will be removed from the list?
No.
Well, then that doesn't set any timelines and I want time.
Otherwise, the name will be removed.
Okay, perfect. And we'll just have her, just go and read it back to us, just so we're clear once she's prepared, just. Let's see.
So it would just be a change to the change to 8.3, so that after what's currently written, it reads, so shall be removed by the designated employee, subject to approval from the area counselor, period. The counselor must respond in writing within 30 days. I don't know if you'd like to say.
Otherwise, approval is granted.
And to that effect, I want to consider new items of new business. Number one, regarding the process, which is you're raising, which I agree with you, shouldn't be held up. In terms of placing the names on the streets, it should be done at the time of subdivision, right? And then the second part, in cooperation with the applicant, of course. And then the second part, I think there should be some direction from this committee and maybe under new business that IRD shall be the delegated authority alone when it comes to taking into consideration issues such as indigenous naming. And that's more of a positive way of staying. So anyway, that's new
Can we
business.
can we delay the second one? Because I think there's gonna be some comments coming forward on that one.
All right,
We can discuss it.
all right, we can talk about the new one. Can I take?
Yes, let's
Okay.
get through this here. We can also clear off the deck, if we want any of the community committee recommendations, for anything, but we can also take a break. Okay, let's deal with this though.
So Councillor Wyatt has moved the concurrence with the public service with the amendment to add that wording, subject to the approval from the area councillor. The councillor must respond in writing within 30 days, otherwise approval is granted.
Aye.
Moved by Councillor Wyatt, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, and that is carried.
5 minutes from.
Councillor Wyatt, if,
I got it really.
I gotta take a break as well. There are several items here that are recommended by community committee.
We will, I have some questions about them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can we please reconvene here in 10 minutes?
very good.
So that will be at 11:37, if you're got your clocks.
Sir, Central Standard Time.
Central Standard.
5 minutes.
That's okay.
Welcome back to the Standing Policy Committee on Property Development for this May 8th of 2025. We are on item number 9.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move items 9, 12, 13, 14 together, supporting the community committee's recommendations.
Okay, 9, 12, 13, 14 as recommended by their respectful community committees. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That is carried. We will now go to item number 10, which is closing portion of Braddock Ave, east of St. Mary's Road. Public service.
Yes, Mr. Borjapel would like to speak with that.
Yeah, so the public service recommendation was to reject the closing. The community committee flipped that. Essentially, the thought process was, even though it's just a closing application, was the intention that the applicant was to eventually put housing on that site. So the community committee supported that notion. We have Andrew Condon online. The concern here is that we don't know future transportation needs for South St. Mattel. And it's entirely possible that some of the right of way could eventually form part of Abinogi-Mi'kmaq or St. Mary's in terms of what that needs to look like. So maybe I'll just pass it over to Andrew for any comments.
Hi, thanks, Gord. Thanks for your time and consideration today. So yes, as Gord noted, unfortunately, we're not in a position to support the closure of Craddock at this time. As a result of growth in the south end of Winnipeg, it's anticipated that future improvements at the St. Mary's and Abinogi-Mi'kmaq will be required. At this point in time, the necessary studies have not been undertaken to understand the extent of these improvements, which will need to include accommodate a transit frequent line, active transportation primary line, and the existing expressway of Abinogi-Mi'kmaq. The existing and forecasted conditions need to be studied to understand the required improvements at the intersection in keeping with council policy. However, historical plans for this intersection have included grade separation, which can be quite land intensive. In addition, it is best practice to carefully control access in close proximity to major intersections such as this. As a result, the proposed development may impact our ability to develop a safe, reliable, and cost-effective solution to make future improvements at the intersection of St. Mary's and Abinogi-Mi'kmaq. We recognize at this time there is only a closure before the committee. However, since the closure and sale property is intended for development to occur, I'd like to ask the committee to consider the future risk in delivering infrastructure improvements that support growth in the city prior to declaring the land surplus. I'd just like to also add that this highlights the need for robust planning of our transportation infrastructure so that the public service can be in a position to collaborate with developers on important projects such as this.
What would be the timing around any expansion of Abinogi?
That's also something that needs to be investigated.
Ballpark?
Yeah. At the end of the day, it really boils down to the pace of development that happens in the south in the city. We do still see significant growth in areas such as Sage Creek, Precinct K, Dawson Trail coming online. Those are all going to drive the need forward. Probably we'll need to be looking at improvements within the next, 10 to 20 years.
What's the distance from the existing Abinogi Mikana to Craddock?
It is, bear with me for one moment. $150 meters, approximately 500 feet.
The proposed development that they're targeting would go into this parking lot that is to the not oriented myself here.
The applicant is George's Burger.
Okay.
So it's the building directly north of Craddock, and they would consolidate Craddock and their existing holding to create a new restaurant and housing.
Sorry, and north is towards Abinogi.
Opposite.
So what is the parking? And I see a hydro station.
They lease land from Hydro to have their parking.
So would the build be on the parking to the south or the build?
No, the build, I think at committee, they did indicate they would work out an arrangement with Hydro to have parking, but the building itself would be within Craddock based on what we saw. Yeah.
I mean, so this would be a much larger expropriation than just
a
street.
The problem would be if it was closed, sold and developed.
Yeah.
And there was some type of interchange or whatever the case was, we would have to remove a 6-story building based on what they showed. So there is a risk there.
Councillor Wyatt.
Yeah, I agree with the public service. I think we've had a history in the city of walking away from, letting go of, to the detriment of us in the long run when it comes time when we have to build the infrastructure, then we're struggling and we have to do the land assembly, and then we got to expropriate, and expropriation then requires us paying for their lawyer as well as ours. And it's a long drawn out process. We get the land right away. However, we've had expropriations that could take 20 years, like the Forks, some land in the Forks. So, I am of the view that we should not just, I agree with Public Works. I want to work with them on this issue as well. I think they have a good argument, even though Public Works has not addressed my concerns about Dugal Road, which I'm meeting with the director on Friday about, even though I've been very cooperative there. But I will work cooperatively on this, but I think it's worth addressing. Not to do this. I appreciate the council for the area must have pressure for housing and everything else. But I would also throw it back on the council for the area, saying they should be pushing for a transportation study along Abbotsford and Wilmington to determine what in the long run, and that means capital money, which we don't do. We don't set aside capital money for planning, so we have on the shelf ready capital projects that we can pull off, especially if we are being hit with a recession coming up, and the federal government might be stepping up with money to get us out of what probably will be a very deep recession when interest rates start skyrocketing as of this time this year, next year. So I'm of the view that we should stick to the public service on this one. To be honest with you, Mr. Chairperson.
And just for clarification, I know the answer, but this is on the malls and corridors.
I know it's outside of that, but
It might be on the edge.
it wouldn't have been identified.
The site directly north of Craddock. So George's Burger is within,
Yeah.
but Craddock is not, because I don't think we would have identified a right of way to be within. So once it's closed, I'm not sure that it fall within.
It would, if
Yeah.
it was closed and consolidated.
Right. So it would form part of that.
Do they own this portion of land?
They own George's Burgers,
Okay,
and
but
then the
not
city would
owns.
sell Craddock to them if it was closed.
Oh, I see. And they've applied to purchase and close this portion of the land.
Right.
Okay, and the city is basically saying not at this time.
And that was the public service recommendation. Committee suggested it be approved for closure,
Okay.
which would then imply that the applicant would need to submit a DSZ to consolidate.
Okay, what were the reasons why committee supported the closure of Craddock Avenue?
best I can tell, they supported development of housing over the transportation needs.
Well, and the uncertainty, it's the uncertainty that drives everything, because we don't have the plans, we don't have the designs on these intersections. You go to any other major city, they'll have designs on the grade separation already kind of shadowed in. Province Provincial Highways is very aggressive on their intersections. You know, the setbacks required, and they already have shadow plans for everything all around, for example, the perimeter highway, right? So they protect their interests, but we never protect ours.
So in the conversations, the redevelopment, Abby, Nuji, McKenna, did they give a timeline of when those redevelopments need to occur or in St. Mary's Road? Like, did they give a timeline? Like,
Of when.
you mentioned that Public Works needed to do some.
Yeah, I think Andrew just mentioned 10 to 20 years was the estimate of possibly when.
10 to 20 years
Yeah.
from now in
Yeah.
the future of
Yeah.
when there'll be some potential redevelopment or street realignment. Okay. And then this person's coming in and saying he wants to close it and develop housing within what, 5 years?
I don't know their timeline. I think one of their main intents, again, I just listened to the committee, was to reconstruct the restaurant, existing restaurant.
Yeah.
But they also wanted to put housing on site as well. So they had some renderings, but I mean, ultimately, nothing's going to come forward unless this is approved for closure, and then they can submit a DSN and we'll know exactly what it is they're doing.
So if they come forward with a plan for housing, like a formal application, could they re-request that Craddock be closed?
Yeah, so because we didn't support this, normally what would happen is that there was a closure, or sorry, a development would come forward in sequence between a DSZ and a closure, right? And they happen concurrent, and then council has the ability to judge them both at the same time. And typically you just judge DSZ because the closing has to occur if you're going to support the right. In this case, they just pursued the DAC, maybe not knowing that they would have to consolidate. So it's just a bit of a backwards process on this one in terms of how to move forward.
And then Andrew, like, I'm looking at this on the map here. We got hydro. Should I could tell which direction I'm going. We have hydro to the east.
To the south of Craddock, yes.
To the south, which east or west? So I can get oriented here. To the south, whatever. Okay, to the south, east it is. And then what is that big parcel of land that's appears to have a parking lot and some sort of garden potentially?
That's all Hydro's corridor. So the city has an agreement with Hydro to have a active transportation through the entire corridor, which runs along the entire north side of Abitibi.
But they also have these properties that like abut Craddock and what is supposed to be.
Yeah, there's houses that front onto Craddock, but actually get access from a public lane.
Yes.
It's very
odd.
Yeah.
And Craddock is like a few 100 feet long, if that.
Yeah, and it's unimproved up to basically the extent of the parking lot.
Yeah.
So there's no concern from the residences with the closure because they take access off the lane anyhow. So the only two concerns were Public Works, and the other one was for collection services, just the way the angular nature of that lane. Collection vehicles can't make that a T. They can't make that turn without crossing private property.
It's the open portion is 210 feet of Craddock.
210 feet of Craddock. Yeah, I mean, I just look at this and I'm not trying, Andrew, I understand where you guys are coming from. I guess it would be nice if we did have A, a plan for what they want to build, and B, a plan for what this on-off expansion ramp would look like for Abinogi and St. Mary's, because I mean, it's tight in there to begin with. It would be like a substantial change to that area if it were to impose onto this roadway, would it not?
It would. I acknowledge that this site is not without constraints, but at the same time, we also don't want to be imposing new constraints and limit our opportunities to develop cost-effective, safe, and reliable solutions.
I don't know what the committee's thoughts are on this. Like, I mean, it's a prime location for development, but we don't have any
Exactly.
actual development going on there.
But without any like actual future plans to, I can't say the name, to Abinuji Mikana, and they're saying like 20 years. Like, we're desperate for housing.
Is there any thoughts from the property development side of things here? Sorry, Gord, I don't mean to not consider you there. I'm more so development like of actual housing and whatnot.
Well, I mean, it is right at the very edge of the malls and corridors, PDO map. And so it certainly has malls and corridors above and below it. It is, a corridor that we are encouraging development on. And it's true when you're talking about property taxes per acre for land productivity. Certainly, housing is going to be much more productive than a larger interchange. And so
No, that's a very subjective statement. I'm sorry for interrupting you. But anyway,
I
right?
I have a question, I guess, for Andrew on behalf of Public Works there. Where would you draw the line of no development to the south? If it's is it Craddock? Is it St. Michael's? Is it Chesterfield? Where is the line?
I mean, Craddock probably would be pretty close. Once we start extending beyond that, the existing constraints are too substantial to really contemplate solutions beyond that.
You're putting an interchange there in the future is tight already.
What's an interchange?
Hmm?
What's an interchange?
Grade separation. Grade separation at St. Mary's, grade separation at Dakota, grade separation at St. Anne's. Try to drive Aboriginal Micanot in rush hour today. We'll have a check out there. We'll check it out.
I want to just add, again, I'm not trying to predetermine what the solution would be. Simply that there's a risk associated with the uncertainty there and adding additional constraints at this time. And this is the confluence of multiple modes of transportation as well. And we have a frequent express line for transit that comes down St. Mary's, as well as significant active transportation corridors. So they're all important considerations for. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't see any application for actual housing on here right now, so I'll just take it with the public service. Does anybody want to move here at this point in time?
We're moving to overturn the decision of community committee and approve the decision.
Not with the recommendation of the public service?
Yeah.
That's Councillor Wyatt moving that motion. All in favor? Aye.
Nay.
Opposed? Would you like to be recorded in opposition? Councillor Santos recorded in opposition. That carries. Moving on to.
I'll move conflict fiduciary.
Sure. We'll step out.
In terms of 23, whatever it was.
Item number 11. Councillor Wyatt will step away, so it's now a one-on-one between me and Councillor Santos. Item number 11, public service, please, and thank you.
I'll give a quick overview of the application and decision. This is the Riel Community Committee 2360 St. Mary's. It's currently an RR5 lot, about 122,000 square feet. The application was to subdivide and rezone, creating two lots, one multifamily small and then the other one public reserve one, for 14 three-story townhomes and 6 two-story townhomes for a total of 20 units. There were variances for front yard and landscaping. Urban planning supported it. The area councilor supported it. No opposition. However, there was a change in the servicing conditions that Gord Chappell would like to speak to.
Yeah, just one minor change, dealing with landscaping and boulevard sod. That's proposed to be deleted. since Manitoba Transportation's already done that as part of the St. Mary's interchange. So it was just a redundant clause because it's already been done.
That's it, that's all. Okay, Counselor Santos, did you
Anything
want?
to save the trees?
Pardon me?
Anything to save the trees?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm like,
Would you like to move on it?
yeah, sure. I'll move the community committee recommendation as amended.
All in
I'm
favor?
sorry, you were making an amendment to the community committee recommendation or?
No, it just says here, yeah, community committee recommendation.
Okay,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. Just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Supported by the public service. Sorry, I just want to see clarity on that. Yes, okay. Counselor Santos's motion then, call the question, all in favor? Aye, opposed? It's carried. Move on to our addendum reports. If we could just have Counselor Wyatt rejoin us, or I could move on to item number 16 if he's not available. We will see. Right, we're on item number 15, which is rezoning 815 Pandora Avenue West. Yes, this was sent back from council.
Pain in the butt, counselor, sent this back.
A quick overview, 815 Pandora, EKT Community Committee. It's a rezoning from C3 to multifamily large. It's a small lot within an existing C3 development. There's a hotel on the site as well. 9,317 square foot lot. It had a single family dwelling, has a single family dwelling on it. The proposal is to rezone it to multifamily large, 18 units, 4 stories with main floor parking. There was a variance as well for lot area, some yards and parking. And again, there was an edit to the servicing agreement, and Gord Chapel will speak to that.
I don't know, Counselor, you know,
You have the resolution here?
yeah, the
Do you have a
clerk has
copy of
it.
it, or do we have a written copy, or I can read off the screen here, I guess.
These are the revised conditions from the public service.
So the discussion was, it's not got missed in the committee, is the Transcona, the Pandora pathway ends presently at Plessy. We're trying to extend it all the way down east westward to state not state one to I'm getting 55. Basically trying to think of the road now. Basically all the way east, connecting to the Transcona Trail at some point, all the way west, I sorry, to the Transcona Trail. Pardon me?
Bornate,
Beyond that?
beyond Bornate. Oh, where the fire hall is?
Well, yeah, but no, what's the next street is the,
Owen.
I drive Owen. I drive it all the time. And so that we can get some kind of connectivity there. And we're trying to get developers who, as they come forward on the north side of Pandora to install AT. And so that we can build this, and this, the developer in question here is amenable. He did confirm that in the hearing process, that he was amenable to paying for this improvement. And that there would be no issue there in terms of an appeal going to this court or anything like that.
So just for clarification.
It comes off our books and it's on
Yeah.
there.
So the Public Works recommendation was to just have
One or the other.
have a sidewalk in front of the planned area, which is 815 Pandora. The motion, I believe, for the amendments suggests to extend that to outside the planned area to basically a property over. So there'd be a longer stretch constructed for the AT path. So there was no concerns from the public service about the proposed amendment.
So this would link up to the Plessy sidewalk, the Plessy Pandora sidewalk.
There'll be a gap until we have the funds, which I'll probably get through all the yards. If there's
Oh.
a gap from this will take it to the west side of the approach that you see coming out of the
Yeah.
parking lot of the credit union. And then the section from the east side to Plessy would be the part that would be funded probably through LDR community fund, right? So it would make up that difference, and I don't know what that cost will be, but I'm gonna get that from our.
And then nothing to the west for the foreseeable future until.
Yeah, one day when we have more funding for AT, which I understand that you guys are working on, maybe this will be identified and.
I know, I see it. Okay, great.
Ultimately, it will be nice to. We lost a right of way. Here's an example of that last issue we talked about. We lost a right of way behind the car dealership where we just simply said, let the car dealership, Frontier, Toyota, which is now Patterson Toyota, take all of our land right away, which was at the end of Pandora. We could have kept a right of way there for an 18 path to connect through to the future rapid transit corridor, what have you, and Transco Trail extension. Unfortunately, we now have to go back to them and negotiate or expropriate their parking lot, which is why it was wise for the committee to vote on the last item. Anyway, so that's an example, but anyway, that's the whole thing.
The funny thing of it all, I chuckle to myself as I look at the mapping system here we have, and there's children on bikes riding on Pandora. So
Yeah, I've seen a woman pushing a stroller.
as amended by Councillor Wyatt with support of the public service and the developer. Any movers here?
And sorry, Councillor Wyatt, you'd like to move all of these changes to the.
Can I have a copy of it?
Sure. I can print it. I would just need to step away from the table if the committee wouldn't mind, but just taking a quick break.
I'll just wait 30 seconds or whatever it is.
Is there anything that we're not aware of or something?
I just need to see the wording.
Yeah, we can try to include some additional standard construction wording because they're built in the path.
Yeah, go ahead. No, we'll sit here.
Next item looks good. Might work. You want to do that new business stuff? Okay. I think we beat that issue up. I can move something out. Yeah.
So, in order to speak to item 16.
There's Shandor, you got it on. How did you do that?
Google Maps. I think you need
No, I-
hearing aid.
Oh, I do. I need more than that. Thank you. It's wonderful. So that's a recommendation. That's the old one. Where's the new one? Here. Which is the red one? Is it red?
I don't think that printer has color.
Where's the start of it?
So their changes are B.
B. Delete the following, okay. On multi-use on our side. Well, it reads wrong. Delete the following. Developer shall pay share of the this reads wrong. You're asking the clause delete the following?
No, so B is the start, and then we're deleting I, which is the original, and then the new II is add the
Where's
following.
the new II?
I come around.
Yes. It just didn't come out in red in the future. I like that. I don't think it's colored printer. Are we not?
Yeah, so this would be the new edition.
Yeah, but we delete the following.
Yeah, this is the original wording.
Is it? I thought it said, share of that, side, asphalt and or sidewalk, the original one said.
I have to go in there at any rate.
Anyway, it doesn't say that here, but,
Yeah,
okay, where's the new?
this is the new right here.
That's the new one.
Yeah.
All right. So, this.
I think they're looking.
Sidewalks is determined. The developer shall at no expense to the city construct 3.5 on the North Boulevard from the sidewalk's existing terminus
Start is a clean.
to the west limit of the planned area.
Conditions and replacing it with.
And, well, it doesn't really say it right. I'm not getting, catching it. That's not correct.
So that's from the west edge of the planned area to the approach.
Is that how, that,
Yeah, we have the map too, just for clarification.
the developer show, there's no sidewalk there now, right? It's not there.
Well, the sidewalk here, the approach.
Yes.
So then the area in red here is what.
Oh, okay, then, can we refer to them?
We didn't label this as anything. I mean, I could.
As per, plan site X. And we say.
You want me to put a label on that?
I just need to know where it would go. So like currently we have appendix A proposed bylaw. You could do
And
you know,
X.
schedule A or B or what
Yeah,
have
yeah.
you as the map. And then I would just need to know where to reference those in this, that map and servicing conditions. So if it's in reference to the active transportation pathway.
Yeah.
Section.
Yeah.
How you'd like it referenced.
All right, I see what you're saying. So the sidewalk goes up to their approach now anyway.
Can you just have their planned area? You want to put add in brackets as shown on appendix B?
Yeah, good. I'll move that, Mr. Chairman. Third, continue the committee time.
Madam Clerk, we're clear on what's being moved here.
I believe so, and you're comfortable with all of the suggested changes, Counselor?
Yeah.
Community Committee did change the language on the active transportation pathway to include, so that it reads, the developer shall at no expense to the city construct a 3.5 meter wide asphalt multi-use pathway or concrete sidewalk in North Boulevard.
That's being deleted.
Okay, so delete,
Yeah, that's all.
take out the or concrete.
Yeah. And the
Okay,
new clause.
okay. And there's no, I'm just checking to confirm there's no appendix B in there. There's
Yeah,
schedule
well, why would
A.
we call it appendix D?
Okay,
Didn't say
appendix B works. They've got schedule A, B, and C, so
Okay.
appendix B should.
D is in Bob.
Anything else?
So just further amending the recommendation of the community committee to add those add the changes to the servicing conditions as circulated to the committee.
Thank you. Moved by Counselor Wyatt, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Thank you to Public Service for working with the committee and the area councilor on that. We'll move on to item number 16. I believe we have Mr. Shanks, Director of Water and Waste with us. If we need to hear from.
I don't think he is.
Ta-da.
He is? Okay. Oh, there we go.
Unless somebody from the department okay, we'll turn it over. Thank you, Mr. Director, for joining us. It's a pleasure having you here. It's like old times. Could we get a brief overview?
Sorry.
Sure, yeah, no, this, so this report already went through last week there, but, as a refresher, it's basically, this is the report that we've been working on. It started out looking at, what kind of information we give in terms of water and sewer capacity to developers, and, also included like, what is our process? Never mind just what the information we give, but what is our process? What do other cities do? Where are areas that we could improve, and how do we compare? And let's get a long-term plan on how to, establish a level of service here and kind of formalize some of these things to see where we can improve. So there's a big industry scan in this report. You'll note there's an appendice to the admin report here that has the actual consultant study that we did. It was a long study, of course, over a year and a half, I guess. We did a bunch of workshopping with local developers and had our consultant do, like I said, that outreach to other cities, Western Canada, that sort of thing. So all that to say, the big takeaways from the report here are, there's a recommendation for, actually I should pause, I got ahead of myself. While we were working on this report last summer, you may recall that the pre-application process for developers was discontinued. That was last summer sometime, I believe. The council approved that. We discontinued the pre-application process, but directed us to replace that functionality of kind of a pre-application process at Water and Waste, because there was some value development community felt there was a value in keeping that functionality with water and waste. So that's kind of like this pre-application quick review of information for water and waste. So that kind of got worked into this scope. It was kind of part and parcel of that study already to see how we provide this information. So the report here is answering both our replacement for the pre-app. We call this rapid response process is what we're putting in place. And it kind of goes hand in hand with this overall review of what we do. So I just want to make sure I mention that. So basically the report's recommendations about the rapid response items, they're saying that, you know, we should, currently our timelines are about 30 days turnaround on average for water and waste, initial capacity assessments. And we have proposed, since this has been approved, we're working towards a 7-day turnaround level of service, 14-day if it's a complicated request, but that new level of service with an accompanying fee. As you can imagine, previously we would do this without a direct fee. We would also take these requests in very informally. You could get a phone call to one of our folks, you get an email, all sorts of different venues to kind of get that information. Recommendation out of this report is to centralize that into an intake, email intake, formally centralize it so we can triage appropriately. I would say that I know anytime I say something like centralize, that could be flags for some people. It sounds like we're slowing things down, not speeding things up. But the reality is, by centralizing it, we can make sure the appropriate resources put on and priorities put on after that first kind of triage. And so if it's coming in one way, we can organize and make sure that we're working on the appropriate files with the right resources. So recommendation is to centralize an intake, charge an inquiry fee for that level of inquiry, and we need new resources. So part of that industry scan identified that the city of Winnipeg is significantly understaffed when compared to other cities everywhere we looked. And I don't mean per capita, I mean like in absolute terms. We have about 10 folks in water and waste that are touching this kind of work right now. Comparatively, Regina has 22, Ottawa has 100, Calgary has 200. Like, so we do not have a whole lot of resources working on this. So the report's recommending we increase these resources. That's 4 resources dedicated to this rapid response process, and the other 4 resources dedicated to building, improving our modeling. And some other, the breakdown of these 8 FTEs that have been for 2025, the breakdown's on page 7. We have senior subject matter engineers in there and a hydraulic modeling engineer, as well as those 4 for rapid response. So there's a lot in there. There's a lot in the report, but like I said, the big takeaway here is our inquiry fee, some extra resources, and a commitment to a 7-day turnaround. There are other things coming out of the consultant report that don't necessarily need recommendations in this report, but it's things that we're going to be working on in the next year or two. Part of it is, helping streamline streamlining the information that we want from developers and communicating to them. There's an educational component to this that we want to work on to help. Don't want to say train developers, but there are some developers that do a lot of work in the city and they know what we're looking for. And then there are other folks that maybe don't do as much work in the city and don't necessarily know what we're looking for. And any kind of that back and forth eats up time, and time is what we're trying to reduce here. So there's a component of outreach we're doing with the community to provide more standardized application forms and to help educate and train our staff as well on the turnaround. Sorry, rambled there for a bit.
No, it's good. At the end of the day, we're going to make the process better. I appreciate that. And I'm sure development will appreciate it. Councillor Wyatt has a question.
Are we going to now be posting online our entire underground sewer system that every other major city does, but the city of Winnipeg does not?
There is commentary in that study about how, like,
Yes or no? Are we going to be posting it online?
Posting like
Our entire underground sewer system.
As the map develops, are we gonna post it?
No, not as a map develops. Our existing underground sewer system is not posted online. Every other major city does. You gotta hire a consultant now who has to talk to you. And then next thing you know, we have to spend, they have to spend a lot of money when it could be all online, like every other major city does. Are we gonna have that, yes or no?
Sort of.
Well, that's a no. Okay.
No, it's not a no.
And then I guess my other question is, are you gonna be dealing with these issues, so to speak, 7-day turnaround? When an application is made, not the clause that we now see that is added to the DASZ, that it will be subject to the developer or the applicant having to hire their own engineers to determine the level of service capacity. And then it'll be then, but every other department, when it goes to the ACG committee, the administrative coordinating group, has to weigh in then, has to give their comments, has to say yay or nay, or there should be a recommendation to amend the application because of concerns from public works or concerns from transit. But your department is the only one that gets a kind of a get out of jail clause that says, no, you can come back, you have to come back later and deal with us, even though council is supreme and has passed the subdivision and you can actually undermine that subdivision because of your recommendation. I'm asking you directly, will you be dealing with these things up front?
So the service inquiry fee that we're establishing, like to deal with the preliminary review of whatever existing data we have to see if there's any high level concerns or obvious constraints with capacity based on whatever preliminary information a developer can give us. That's what this is talking about per se. The actual final determination on what kind of capacity a particular property has, depending on what kind of proposed development is happening there. That process isn't part of this service capacity. There will still have to be a consultant study to kind of finalize and design.
I thought that was what we wanted this process for, to address. So,
just so you know that this is passed already, we're looking to receive it as information.
Yeah, I know. Well, I guess I appreciate that, Mr. Chairperson. I guess the other question I have is that, so basically what you're telling me is that they're still gonna have the clause there saying subject to water and waste, requiring a sign off of a study that the private consultant will have to be hired by the applicant. And so you're asking for resources to do this at our end when they actually go and hire the private consultant anyway. I don't know why we're approving that. And then the second part of this is, why are we giving you more resources and our planning department none? They're the ones at the front end moving things along. I don't understand why water and waste would be getting all these new resources and the planning department would not be getting these new resources. Is there a reason for that?
I don't think it's exclusive. This study was specific to water and waste servicing capacity only and our resources. So we're doing the best practices of what other cities are doing in terms of we're not hiring people to do designs of private developments. We don't have those details. The hydraulic modeler, for example, in here would be more so to do catchment modeling, to set up more robust sewer catchment modeling so that we could provide that information to a developer's consultant in order for them to see if what they're trying to build or what they're proposing to build fits into that. So that's what those resources.
Until you post, one more question. Until you post the entire system online, you are not following the best practices of other cities. And then my final point is this: right now, under our licensing regime with the province of Manitoba, with regards to the North End treatment plant, the South End treatment plant, the West End treatment plant, we have filed in the past, and I believe it's still the practice, that we will basically suppress infill development to accommodate greenfield development. And that the province has internally with our engineers at Water and Waste and their engineers in conservation signed off on that approach. Is that still going to be the approach made? Because what it does is we basically have now caved into the Qualicos of the world and everyone else who wants all this greenfield development, so that they have capacity in the pipe and we suppress the infill, which is exactly contrary to what we've been trying to do in the city. Is that the policy when it comes to our approvals of the licensing? Because I've seen the letter and I've seen the letter signed off by the deputy minister and sitting by our staff to staff level. Is that still the case?
I don't believe that's the case, Counselor. I think you're misinterpreting some correspondence, but
I did.
Just for clarification around why does P&D not get positions and why Water and Waste? Can you clarify in 10 seconds or less who's funding the positions?
It was Water and Waste. This would be rates and there's some of that, some of the inquiry fee recovers the cost of some of these positions.
And the income from the fees to look at the available capacity that is strictly going to Water and Waste and nothing to P&D?
That's correct, yes. Like the revenue structure in here is it's all Water and Waste, it's all utility supported. I just very quickly, I just want to say like I wanted to clarify like the data, like the pipe sizing, the pipe locations, manhole locations, open data. I believe some of that's already on our open data site, but we are looking to try to more directly provide existing infrastructure locations to the councilors of your question. But that's different than capacity. Like the physical structures in the ground are not necessarily, capacity changes. It's a snapshot in time. It has to be analyzed every time there's a development. No city puts capacity on a open map like that because it's a snapshot in time. That's what we can confirm with this. And so we are pursuing best practices here. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Do I have a mover for information here?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Councillor Santos to receive as information. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay, out of protest.
Councillor Wyatt, out of protest. That motion carries. We have one other item that I believe is in camera.
All right.
Next,
So-
motion to go in camera.
Yes.
Councillor Wyatt moves to go into camera. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That is carried. We will now move into camera. Welcome back to the Standing Policy Committee on Property Development for this May 8th, 2025. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Wyatt. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back in June.